you know, over the past few times that I've been giving the homilies for the church service, I've been going over chapters from the Tao. This is one of my favorite texts, and I decided to continue on with that pattern during today's Sunday service. So let me read the chapter that I wanted to discuss. I'll read it in its entirety first, and then I'd like to go over each one of the different parts of it, if I could. So chapter 44 from the Tao. Fame or integrity, which is more important? Money or happiness, which is more valuable? Success or failure, which is more destructive? If you look to others for fulfillment, you will never truly be fulfilled. If your happiness depends on money, you will never be happy with yourself. Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize that there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. So the first part of chapter 44 from the Tao starts out with fame or integrity, which is more important. In our current society, a lot of people want to be well known. They want to be famous. And if you think about the reason why, it's fairly obvious. If within there is a sense of separateness from everyone else, from the universe as a whole, this sense of separateness compels one to look for attention and recognition from other people. And we can see this happening through programs that we see in the news and through magazines that we read, such as People magazine and other things like that. It's this failure to recognize that we are co-creators with the Godhead that leads to this sense of separation. As we all know, we're all genetically linked. We all have the same ancestors. It's not just that we're genetically linked, however. Each one of us is spiritually linked to each and every person, to each and everything in this universe. So I'd like people to contemplate that, if they will, during this upcoming week. We're not just genetically linked, we're spiritually linked. As I like to say, each one of us is an important stitch in the fabric of creation. This beautiful creation that we are all a part of. If just one stitch is not present, then it is not complete and it is not perfect. It is the realization that we are all part of this fabric of creation that leads you to a sense of belonging and to a knowing of who and what you really are in this world, in this universe. As co-creators with God, everything that you see around you is part of your creation. Everything. To understand this, we have to take responsibility for what happens in this world. Instead of blaming other people for what's going on or blaming God for what's going on, we have to take responsibility that we are all a part of this, and that if we want change in this world, what do we have to do? We must change ourselves. There's a lot of self-help books out there and programs and DVDs, and a lot of them actually have very good information. And a lot of them also tie very closely into mystical concepts. For instance, you'll hear from self-help authors that you can't love other people unless you love yourself, right? You cannot give something which you don't have. And the way that I interpret things like that is you have to go within. You have to do your meditative practices, your contemplative practices, your prayer work, whatever it is that you feel brings you closer to God, closer to recognition of what and who you really are. And once you do that, the separateness that some people feel will go away, will melt away. And it's once that happens that there is not this seeking or desire for fame or recognition from other people. Chapter 44, the way that this chapter is set up is there's the 3 sentences in the first paragraph, and then the subsequent paragraphs are going back and explaining those 3 sentences more. So let me try to clarify what I mean by that. So the first sentence again is fame or integrity, which is more important. The second paragraph of the Tao, the first part of it, basically gives you the answer to that question. And it is, if you look to others for fulfillment, you will never truly be fulfilled. So what the Tao is pointing out here is, and a lot of us have this problem, we want to be liked by people, right? We want to have a sense of approval from others. This is a very common, it's part of the human condition. More evolved people have moved beyond that, but others of us who haven't made that spiritual evolution yet are still caught in it. And what the Tao is saying is, if you're looking around for other people to tell you what to do and what to be like and how to think, you are never ever going to be happy, because you're not following your true self. You are not looking within. All of us, God has encoded all of us with a divine plan and a purpose in this life. And it's different for each one of us. I think one of the most important jobs that we have in this life is to determine what our divine plan is. And you can only do that by going within. Someone else cannot tell you what your divine plan is. Other teachers, masters can give you insights, can maybe help point you on the right direction, on the right path up the mountain, but only you can determine for yourself what your divine plan is. And once you have determined what that is, it should be the most important thing that you do in your life to fulfill it. And once you fill your divine plan, once you fulfill it completely, that's when you get off the cycle of rebirth. I recently started taking the ukulele, and I bring this up because it has to do with other people telling you what to do. I grew up in a musical family. Both of my parents are professional musicians, or were. And so, of course, they wanted me to play an instrument growing up. This is very common in musical families. So I started playing the cello, and I practiced many hours every day for many years. And my parents sent me to the competitions and all the orchestras and quartets and all the stuff you can think of doing. I was doing it. And then after over a decade, I was burned out. And I realized I wasn't doing it for me. I was actually doing that for my parents because I thought it made them happy. But in the end, it really didn't make me happy. And I was talking to my ukulele teacher. He had a very similar experience. And then another gentleman who was there getting a lesson. And this is actually pretty common in the field of music. And it's not just music, it's sports, it's arts, it's intellectual pursuits, whatever it is that maybe your parents or your family is telling you that you need to be doing this to make you happy. And so people do it, and then after years of doing it, they realize, you know what, this actually doesn't make me happy. It might make other people happy, but it's not fulfilling to me. So determine for yourself who and what you are, what you believe, what your divine purpose is. And then pursue that with a burning passion, a never-ending burning passion. So the second sentence of the first paragraph of chapter 44 states, money or happiness, which is more valuable? So you're probably thinking that the answer to that question is pretty obvious, and I might tend to agree with you. Money will never, ever, ever make you happy. Money is not a bad thing in and of itself. People who say money is evil, I don't agree with them. Money in and of itself is not bad. You can do great things with money. You can help a lot of people with money. You can improve the environment with money. It's attachment. It's bondage to money that's the evil. So what does Christ say in the Bible? He says, you know what? A camel is going to go through the eye of a needle easier than a rich man. Was he saying that it's a camel in and of itself, just because it's a camel, can do that better than a human being? That's not what he was saying. He was saying that rich men, they tend to be so bound to money and what that represents to them and what that represents to society and all of the things that they have because of the money. They're dragging that behind them like a big ball and chain, and they just can't make it through the eye of the needle. A rich man can make it through the eye of a needle if they're detached from their money. If having money is no different to them than not having money. It's the same for any other material possession, right? Or anything else in this life. Isn't that what the Buddha was telling us? We all have desires. And many of us are caught in this pattern of thinking that if I get this particular desire, I will be happy. If I get that car or that house, or I marry that woman or that man, or I have 2 children or 3 children, then I'll be happy. It's that next step that's going to make me happy, right? If I win the next lottery, then I'm going to be happy. I'm not happy now, but once I win that, then I'm going to be really happy. But we all know that's not true. Once you get your desire, then the way that we're hot-wired is we want something else. Once you get that nice house, it's not good enough. You want a better house, a bigger house, a house closer to the beach. Once you get a nice car, you want a different car. And so on and so on. When the Buddha was trying to determine what was causing suffering in the world, he realized that it was desire that causes suffering, because it's this never-ending wheel. You can't get off of it. And so he decided, well, I'm going to be desireless, right? So he spent all his time being desireless, and what happened? He wasn't happy. And he realized the reason he wasn't happy was he was desiring to be desireless. Does everyone understand that? He was desiring to be desireless. So he was caught in the same problem. It was only once he recognized that truth and he touched down on the ground, then he was enlightened. And so that's the message he's telling us. It's desirelessness that helps you achieve enlightenment. You can have a very spiritual, very loving, very kind, very enlightened person who's a billionaire or a millionaire. I just want to emphasize it's not the fact that they're wealthy. You can have a very enlightened person who has no money or has a reasonable amount of money. Again, it's not the amount of money. It's whether you're attached to it and what you are desiring in life. So I'm just going to read the Tao's basically instruction on whether money or happiness is more valuable. And this, again, you have to go to the second paragraph, and it's referring back up. It says, if your happiness depends on money, you will never be happy with yourself. So, what's the third line in the first paragraph of chapter 44? It says, success or failure, which is more destructive? Does anybody out there think that if you're successful, that can be destructive for you? Of course it can. Just as failure can be destructive. If your identity is tied into your success or your failure or both, that's what's destructive. So let me try to explain that. Are you your successes? Are you your failures? Or are you something beyond that? Are you something more than that in this life? The Tao says, with regard to success or failure, in chapter 44, it says, be content with what you have and rejoice in the way things are. When you realize that you don't lack anything, the whole world belongs to you. So I've had conversations with many people over the years, and they talk about how things are so awful in the world today. 20 years ago, it was much better than this. America's going downhill. The other parts of the world are going downhill. Everything's so bad and so wrong with the world. I would posit to you that what's happening in the world now is God's perfection. What's happening in the world now is exactly as God intended it to be. It is exactly what His will is. This is what the Tao is trying to tell you. The Tao is saying, if you're content with the way things are, then you can rejoice. You realize that this actually is perfection. If you think of this world as like a river or a strong current, and this river or strong current is coming against you, and you're thinking that that's bad, and you're fighting against it, rather than accepting it and going along with it, what's going to happen? How are you going to perceive the world? This world is awful, it's terrible, it's always pushing against me, this current's always dragging me down, I always have to keep swimming back up to get to where I was, and it pushes me back, and then I got to swim back up. Rather than allowing the current to take you where it's supposed to take you. There's a Christian mystic by the name of Emmett Fox, and some of you may have heard of him. And one of the things that he talks about, which I really like, is you have to let go and let God. Right? In Genesis, the Bible talks about, let there be light. And there was light. God wasn't forcing something to happen. He was allowing something to happen. It's like our head minister, Reverend Tara, talks about all the time. When you pray to God, you detail exactly what you need to detail in your prayer request. You make it specific. But then you let God. You let God do what God needs to be done. If you step back after your prayer and you start telling God, well, this is what I want, and this is how I'd like you to do it. This is how I'd like all the circumstances to come together to achieve what I want. Then you're telling God what to do, right? You're directing God what to do. You're not allowing things to happen in this lifetime. So I feel that everything that is going on in this world is for a specific purpose. I may not be able to explain to people why certain terrible things are happening, other than giving a generalization about karma. I may not be completely in tune to God's will and His evolutionary plan for not just every one of us, but for everything that is occurring on this planet. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a divine plan, and it doesn't mean that things aren't what they are supposed to be. A lot of people tell me, well, if you tell me that, God could take away all this stuff, then I might believe in God. I don't believe in God because of these terrible things happening, and if He was really a loving and a good and a kind God, He would never let this stuff occur. He would never let children die of disease and lack of food. He'd never let people be born with disabilities. If there was truly a good God, these things wouldn't be happening. So when I respond to people with questions like that, I talk about karma and past lives and consequences, not punishments, consequences to things that you think, do, and say. But also, I point out, why are you questioning God? You know who we should really be questioning? Is ourselves for allowing these things to happen. If you truly believe that you are a co-creator with God, and we have free will, right? What's the greatest gift that God gave us? It was free will. Yes, God could take away all the bad stuff, but in order to do that, he would have to be taking away somebody's free will, or many people's free will, right? Some people like the way bad things. Some people like doing harm to others. The point I'm trying to make is we're all in this together. If we want the world to change, we have to change ourselves. I never buy it when people tell me that I can't do enough to make any difference. I say that's baloney. Remember I said before at the start of the homily that we're all stitches in this fabric of creation? If you change one stitch in that fabric of creation, it changes all of creation. If everybody focused on changing themselves, focused on kindness and love and joy and unity and compassion and forgiveness, every one of us, I guarantee you this world would change. Even if the majority of people in the world did that, the world would change. The greater controls the lesser. If 51% of this world did that, this world would be irrevocably changed. So I tell people there is a lot you can do. Just because you don't have money, it doesn't matter. You think you don't have the connections out in this physical world, it does not matter. You and I and everybody can spend time going within and changing ourselves. I don't know that famous, I don't know who wrote this, somebody did that, when a butterfly flaps around the world, there's going to be a tornado somewhere else in the world. And the point of that saying is that that's how interconnected we are. That's how one small little change can affect everything in the world.